OK, let's talk now to Stephen Nix. He's Regional Director for Eurasia at the International Republican Institute. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Stephen Nix, welcome to the NewsHour. Is this really all about Mr. Lukashenko trying to point score against the EU because of the imposition of sanctions? And he knows he's got a weak situation there because his country borders Lithuania and Latvia.
Well, I think that's correct. This is directed at the EU, but in particular, the Lithuanian country, the country of Lithuania. Let's go back and really look to see how we got to where we are today. Roughly a year ago, Lithuania was at the forefront of the fight against the authoritarian regime in Belarus. And after a completely falsified election, an election that Alexander Lukashenko stole, an election that Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, we believe, and data supports, actually won that election. She was forced to flee her country and take up refuge in Lithuania. There, led by Foreign Minister Landsbergis and others, they took her in, they supported her. Now other Western organizations are supporting her, and she is building a very strong and vibrant opposition movement based in Vilnius. That's the first event. The second event was the series of sanctions promulgated first by the European Union and then most recently by the United States, targeting individuals and businesses in Belarus. And so in reaction to these sanctions, Lukashenko is basically weaponizing the asylum process and trying to create a tremendous humanitarian crisis on the Lithuanian border.
Okay.
So that's how we got to where we are today.
But Mr. Nix, last week or about 10 days ago, Mr. Lukashenko of the UK basically said, you guys can choke, and he used the word choke, you can choke on your sanctions. Is this actually an indicator of the fact, though, that the sanctions are working? Because if you look at the map of Europe, any refugee or migrant who wants to get into Europe from either Iraq or Afghanistan, the less obvious path would be up towards Belarus and then into the EU via either Latvia or Lithuania. It'd make much more sense to try and do it via Greece or Turkey. Greece and Turkey have both stepped up to the plate, particularly 2 or 3 years ago when the migrant crisis was at a massive peak. So doesn't this mean two things? One, they'll have to be guided, and two, they'll have to be guided by Belarus, that's what I mean. And two, the sanctions must be working.
Well, you've correctly ascertained the situation. The actions being taken by the Lukashenko regime now, really drastic actions with this border crisis, suggest to us that the sanctions are having the desired effect. These economic sanctions on the very few enterprises that are actually profitable in Belarus are now being sanctioned and depriving Lukashenko of badly needed income. So the reaction to this is such that we now know the sanctions are working. And this goes back to the late Senator John McCain, who led the fight for Magnitsky-style sanctions to sanction authoritarian leaders for human rights violations. So it's been proven, I think, now by the actions of the regime, the sanctions are having the desired effect. What that suggests to the United States and the European Union is that the sanctions should not just be continued, they should be strengthened because they are working.
Mr. Nix, good to get your thoughts. Thank you so much, Stephen Nix, there talking to us out of the States.